All right, the time being 6:33, I would like to call the Winooski School Board meeting to order and ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now I'd like to ask everybody to please join us as Tori leads us in some mindful moments to prepare us for the meeting.
All right, so everybody just find a comfortable seat and we're all going to arrive together, doing what we do here, which is govern for the citizens of Winooski. So everybody just be in their seat and take a nice deep breath. And then you breathe out. This is us taking that moment from wherever we come to breathing into here and breathing out to now. One more time, breathe in here and breathe out now. And you're just going to find a regular breathing pattern and just let things settle from your day. Feel yourself breathe in as you can feel your shoulders relax as you breathe out. And as we settle in, I want to take this time to honor governance, elected by the people, for the people. We're in a change of just coming off an election where voters got to decide on budgets, voters got to decide who was going to represent them here at this board table. We want to send out honor for all people of Winooski. For everyone who participates with their voice or their vote to make communities stronger and coming together and making connections. And a special honor for Winooski and the fact that we are one of the most colorful, complex, dedicated communities of building each other up as we learn together new ways of being, new ways of seeing, and new ways of interacting with ourselves and with others, and therefore our community. So breathe in here. Breathe out now. And we'll come together as we support our community.
Very thoughtful, well done, thank you.
So with the reorganization of the board, I get to step in here and get us started. And so I would invite Robert Millar, our clerk, to come forward and to swear in our new member, Margaret Bass, and our returning newly elected member, Matthew McNeil.
I haven't done this a whole lot, so bear with
No,
me.
Fair enough.
All right, so I'll just read and you just want to repeat after me. If you want to raise your right hand. I, Margaret Bass,
I, Margaret Bass,
do solemnly swear that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont,
do solemnly swear that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont,
and that I will not, directly or indirectly,
that I will not directly or indirectly
do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof,
do any act or anything
Or-
injurious to the Constitution or
government thereof.
government thereof.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of school board member
that I will faithfully execute the office of school board member
for the Winooski School District
for the Winooski School District
of Winooski, Vermont,
of Winooski, Vermont,
and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons,
and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
according to law.
according to law.
I'll have you sign. Oh, she's got.
Thanks.
Congratulations. Yay, welcome.
It's no pencil, isn't it? Yep. It's still. All right, Matt, you've done this before.
I have, I don't remember those.
You memorize it. Raise your right hands. I, Matthew McNeil,
I, Matthew McNeil,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont,
that I will be true and faithful to the state of Vermont,
and that I will not directly or indirectly
and that I will not directly or indirectly
do any act or thing injurious to the Constitution or government thereof,
do any act or anything injurious to the state of Vermont or government?
to the Constitution or government thereof.
Thereof.
I
all
should
good.
have split that up more. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of school board member
that I will faithfully execute the office of school board member
for the Winooski School District
for the Winooski School District
of Winooski, Vermont,
of Winooski, Vermont,
and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons,
and will therein do equal right and justice to all persons,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
to the best of my judgment and ability,
according to law.
according to law.
Sorry, I don't know why I'm.
It's all good, buddy. Thanks, Rob. Clerk, see you.
Yeah, you too, clerk.
Board.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, so our next action is to nominate a president or chair of the board. Open it to nominations. Do you have a nomination, Tori?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Michael DeCaro.
Okay, so I hear Mike DeCaro nominated as president or chair. Any other nominations? Hearing none. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. We now have a president, chair of the board.
Not that you had any choice not to. Mike. We're not even gonna ask
Motion
that question.
second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay.
This keeps happening and I keep showing up.
No, yeah.
Cause and effect, I gotta figure that out.
It's all yours. Back
Thank
to
you.
you.
Thank you, I appreciate I am honored. So section C here, election of a secretary. Secretary, as we have defined it, has been signing warrants on Thursday mornings and other actions which have been relatively limited beyond that at this point. So I would accept any nominations for the secretary.
I have a nomination.
Tori?
Mr. Alex Yin, I nominate.
A nomination for Alex Yin. Anyone else? Any other nominations? Okay, with that, all those in favor, Alex as secretary? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Good. All right.
Thank you.
Next. The next piece I want to spend a few minutes on code of conduct because to me this rules pretty much everything we do and how we do it as we go through the year. So I wanted to spend some time actually reviewing these if you don't mind. So the code of conduct, and I'll just go down through briefly and not necessarily read them complete, but I want to get the thought and the ideas out. So it says, it starts with the board commits itself and its members to ethical, businesslike, and lawful conduct, including proper use of authority and appropriate decorum when acting as board members. 1, members must demonstrate loyalty to the ownership, not conflicted by loyalties to staff, other organizations, or other personal interests as parents or guardians. In some cases, we certainly have our interest with being parents, and you have to do that because you have to advocate for your children. You have no choice. That's pretty much why we're here. separating those in all cases are not necessarily easy. So I think we have not had any issues. I don't expect any. That is definitely one of the leading items. It is the ethical and legal duty of all board members to avoid conflicts of interest as well as the appearance of conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest means a situation when a board member's private interest is distinguished from the board member's interest as a member of the general public would benefit or be harmed by his or her actions as a member of the board in order to comply with this obligation thus imposed, the board and its members will adhere to the following standards. Members be familiar with and adhere to the provisions of education law, which define the school board powers and govern board member compensation, which you all just received. So we got to be careful for that. 2, board member will not take any action that is intended to give the impression that he or she would represent special interests or partisan politics. 3, a board member will not use his or her position on the board in any manner intended to unfairly promote personal financial interests or the financial interests of family members, friends, or supporters. Number 4, a board member will not accept anything of value in return for taking particular positions on matters before the board. 5, a board member will do nothing intended to leave the impression that his or her position of any issue can be influenced by anything other than a fair presentation of all sides of the question. Number 3, then, board members may not attempt to exercise individual authority over the organization. A board member will do nothing intended to give false impression that he or she has the authority to make decisions, take actions on behalf of the board or the school administration. As such, 1, members' interaction with the superintendent or with staff must recognize the lack of authority vested in individuals except when explicitly authorized by the board, meaning, and I think we've talked about this a number of times, and that is, we may all have our own opinion. We may disagree. At the end of the day, at the end of the discussion, we vote. We get a majority. When we get a quorum, whether it's yours or not, as on the positive side of the vote, that is our intent as a board, and that's how we carry forward. Members' interactions with the public, the press, and other entities must recognize the same limitations in the inability of any board member to speak for the board except to repeat explicitly stated board decisions. That one, depending on any particular situations, may come up, and obviously if you have any questions, by all means, reach out. We can have those discussions. 3, except for participation in board deliberations about whether the superintendent has achieved any reasonable interpretation of board policy, members will not express individual judgments of performance of employees, volunteers, or the superintendent. Our job here relates to the superintendent and our view of his completion of the job that we've tasked him with. And as far as going down into employees, other volunteers, or other staff, that's not our place. 5, board members will be properly prepared for board deliberation. Read your minutes. 6, members will support the legitimacy and authority of final determination of the board of any matter, irrespective of the board member's personal position on the issue. Seem relatively straightforward when we read down through them. So any discussion, comments, thoughts? I just wanted to make sure that we at least review those as we go through time. So,
Thank you.
all right. A refresher is always good there. Good. All right. And then Robert's rules for small boards. We've done this and pretty much glanced over it. I'm gonna hand these out. I'm not gonna read all through them, but as we've discussed in the past, it's one motion doesn't necessarily need to be seconded. That's with the Robert's rules for small boards. We don't have to stand. No limit to the number of times a member can speak to a question or motions to close or limit debate generally should not be entertained. By all means, don't hesitate. If I don't look around, tap me on the shoulder, slap me, throw a pencil at me if I don't recognize you. But just get my attention, and if you don't, if we need to go somewhere, we'll go there. Informal discussion of a subject matter is permitted while no motion is pending. Sometimes when a proposal is perfectly clear to all present, a vote can be taken without a motion's having been introduced unless agreed to by unanimous consent. I don't think we've ever really run into that one. Chairman may not need not rise while putting questions to the vote. God, I can't keep getting up and down. My hip won't let that happen. Chairman can speak into session without rising or leaving. So just some small, we don't need the second, really ends up being part of the big part of that. So any questions or concerns with Robert's rules for small boards and following those, continuing to follow those? All right. Committee assignments, communication, parent engagement and negotiations. Communications. We have had, who have we had on communications? Was that?
I think it was us.
Okay, that was parent engagement too, though, right?
I think we combined them.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. All right. Any,
We kind of
continuing?
did that last year in terms of communication, engaging parents in that communication piece of it that we did.
Okay.
Do you want to keep them two separate ones? It's probably a good idea.
I think with our recent budget adoption and having the communications position, it may be good to have one with one board member with as a focal point into the board for the communications. And then the parent engagement, we can do the two. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Does that work? So, communications, that would be a single point of contact to the board. Let me start in a different place. Parent engagement, are you guys still would you both be good with that?
Well, I guess
Or do we need to
Margaret,
change?
what you would like to be a part of also,
There
in
we
terms
go.
of maybe we can clarify what communications,
There
like
we
what
go.
the purpose would be for that, what the purpose would
Okay.
be for parent engagement. Because last year it was so more focused on conversations, and
That's
this
why
year it
we
would be
combined them.
different, you know,
Okay.
so kind of figuring out what our
Okay.
goal would be.
So one suggestion I have is, because I think the communications and the parent engagement have traditionally been like the same committee,
Right.
is maybe you start with a single committee instead of two, and then you decide from there whether or not you want to split those out.
Okay.
Just because you're only five, you know,
Right.
because two of you are going to be on negotiations
Right.
and
Negotiations.
and two of you are on the capital project committee as well. So just thinking about your capacity to really engage with the
Right.
work. And the communications person, the earliest they would be on board would be July 1. Yeah. But
Okay.
So would it make sense for, because truly Margaret and I are left without a committee assignment. You two are on negotiations, you two are on capital project. And then maybe Margaret and I could maybe think about how we would want to talk about community and parent engagement and see that, how that would roll out. And
Okay.
then see if we want to bring you in for the communications part of it, because I know we still have some work we'd still like left to be done.
And the capital project needs to have a clear communications and thing. And that, so the three of us doing communications and capital and parent engagement isn't necessarily a bad idea.
Yeah,
Right,
just got to
but
be
you just
careful
can't
with
have
the
Can't be three
third.
together.
Oh,
can't
my
have a
third
quorum at a
person
meeting,
becomes a
yeah, committee
quorum.
meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
You can meet,
So
but
if
you've
we
got to
sort
warn
it
it.
out with two of
minutes.
us and then bring, you know,
Or you two bring, and then
Yeah.
whenever you need to talk to me
Yeah.
about capital project, yeah.
okay.
Right.
I forgot about the two.
Does that work for you? Would that be okay to,
Work
you
with
and
Tori
I
on a
find time to meet
parent engagement,
at
just
sometime the
to,
next couple of weeks and talk about
understand what
like
it is.
communication and parent engagement?
And do we decide tonight, just given Margaret's like 5 minutes in so far? Maybe she wants a
yeah,
little chance
no, we
to-
can
Yeah,
certainly
yeah,
do
yeah.
that. I think we need to assign the negotiations because that's the more immediate need. And I don't, are you still good with the negotiation?
Unless Margaret really has a passion for this.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to a new member.
No, I'm-
Not tonight. Not that it's bad, it's just different. Anybody else want negotiation? Okay. So I don't mind, so I don't know how we,
I'll jump in
Need
if
to
you
vote
want
these?
to give it a different try, Mike.
I
I
want
mean, it makes sense for you to
got
be
to
a
close
vote.
this one out
Yeah.
first, if we need to clean it up. So we need to vote on these, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I would nominate Matt to the negotiations committee as one of two.
So these, you don't have to
Don't
vote
have
on.
to vote on these,
Yeah,
it's
these
just
are
assignments.
appointments
Okay.
and assignments, yep.
All right, so Matt and I will continue that, and we'll, as we get done, if anything changes as we get into next year, because we're doing a one-year deal this time, and we have to do it again starting next year, so
Okay.
we'll see how that works then. And the parent engagement, we'll give it a couple of weeks. We'll defer till April and see how that works. You can get a little more background and detail, get you involved, and see how that goes. All right. Good, so we'll just pop that one back on in April.
Yep.
All right, board photo, we won't take that one next. We'll do that one at the end of the night.
Sure.
When everybody's ragged, we'll look fresh. All right. Agenda review and adjustments. Anybody got anything? We got a fairly good list of adjustments we need to do. So one of them, got an email late from the VSBA about having one delegate from our board as a voting member for the statewide teacher healthcare negotiations. So we need to have one person to present a vote to the folks that are doing this negotiation when they finally get done. So we just need that one person as assigned.
Right, and so it'll be a vote cast at the VSBA annual meeting, and it can be done via telephone, email. Nobody has to be present, but we need a specific person from the board to be the voting delegate.
When is the vote?
When
we-
the negotiations are,
Yeah, we need to
Done.
have the name to them by April 1st, but it probably won't happen until the fall, given the timeline for negotiations around statewide healthcare.
And that's something that we can discuss during like exact limitations before I like.
Yeah.
we'll be able to talk about what the outcome is and how we feel as a board to cast a vote, cast a unified vote, right?
Right.
So, we just need to get a name to the VSBA by April 1st, so they have a name from every district to when they know they'll have the vote. So,
So where are you adding this? I missed that.
this one is, we're gonna add it as 8A.
8A, thank
Yep.
you.
7A is gonna end up we're gonna put in the co-principal introduction, a new principal at the high school. And then 7A, I'll call it 1, there's an item in here, water main break. We're gonna change the action, we're gonna take the action piece out and just have a discussion, that hasn't closed up yet. 7B, the school calendar. That one is gonna move to April, so we're gonna take that one off the calendar, that's not closed out yet. And then we're gonna add in 7C, a Funfair update, which is a discussion and an update from Sean. Okay. Any other adjustments there? All right. With that, Sean, I'll turn it over to you for the intros on Focus on Learning.
All right, I'll let Kirsten
Oh, Kirsten,
tee it
sorry.
up for us.
Hi.
Welcome back.
All right, so I know most of you have met Ballot before. He is our Somali and Mai speaking homeschool liaison for the school district. And without him and the other liaisons, we would not be able to function as a district. So they all do so much for us. Dalip is going to be presenting tonight on the culture of the Somali and Somali Bantu communities and some of the challenges that they face with resettling in the U.S. and challenges around the U.S. public school systems. One thing I just wanted to mention, he'll talk a little bit more about this. I know in the budget presentations we do in the fall, I talked about the caseloads of liaisons. Right now, he's got about 115 students on his caseload, K-12, and that keeps him pretty busy. So that's far more than we would like for just one liaison to have. And he can talk a little bit about the challenges around that, and thinking about we need more liaisons in the future. So just a plug.
And I think everybody knows Kirsten, but Kirsten
Oh, yeah.
Bogart is our Director of English Language Learning and Curriculum.
Great, Ellie.
Welcome to
Sorry about the soda. Some people might tell you it's not as healthy. Yet I went to McDonald's and got the biggest cup I could get. But I brought it for a reason. I mean, like Somalians around this time meaning in the evening, Usually we enjoy to have chai. You call chai. Chai, we call chai and you call chai. So chai, tea that has sugar, milk, everything. So I went home today after school and tried to make a delicious cup for me, for myself. I put a kettle on the stove and put all the spice in to make it smell nice. And I looked for a tea, so it happens that I don't have one. So obviously I couldn't drink spice with milk without a tea, and I couldn't get one from my neighbor. Usually back home that's what we do, but here I was a little bit skeptical about that. I didn't do that because my neighbor and I have been neighbors for over a decade now, and we don't know each other's names. So I couldn't suddenly go to his house and say, hey, I need a cup. A tea. So that being said, here we are. My name is Dalib. I work here at the school as a homeschool liaison. I think this upcoming school year will be my 15th year here. I work with a lot of students, as Kristen said, about 115 students plus their families, and these are families that don't speak the English language, don't read and write, so they need help in all aspects of life. So, but I like it here, and it keeps me busy, and I like to be busy, so I enjoy what I do. So that being said, today I am here to give you a short presentation that would be about the Somali and the Somali Bantu community. Yeah, it gets a little bit tense to talk about the history and stuff like that. Well, in fact, this is not my first presentation. I have done several other presentations at different places, and the struggle that I always faced during these presentations was that on how to avoid talking about the Civil War. It's the Civil War that destroyed our country, property, and took away so many innocent lives. So I also come to know that if I don't talk about the war, everything else that I talk about doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, it might make sense to you, but I feel like it doesn't really represent who I am. So at some point, I had to make a decision about it. And that decision, the question I asked myself was whether I should stop talking about the war and all that, or maybe be a little bit brave and continue to talk about it. So talking about it, I decided to continue to talk about it, and talking about it gave me some confidence, if you like, and changed me into a brave person. So I have been talking, or I have talked, about the distractions, extractions, frictions, detentions, actions and reactions, and interactions that it caused, and sometimes positive interaction like we're having today. I don't think I would be here today if it wasn't the Civil War. And I feel blessed being here with you and appreciate every day the openness that many of you showed in welcoming us into such a wonderful nation. I think the war gave us experiences, some good experiences and terrifying ones too. So as I kept talking about these mixed experiences, I then gained confidence and became okay with it. Okay, not that the war happened, but okay that we can move on and shape lives again. Moving on and shaping a life was not easy, but it was the only option we had. So I decided to continue to talk about the war and all the effects. But the question was, what else should I talk about? Because civil war will have some sort of result on people regardless of where it happens. So I struggled with the choice. I was like, should I talk about geography, historical events, traditions, adolescents, Islam, since Somalia is or claims to be 99.9% Muslims. In other words, we practice the religion of Islam. Or greetings. I mean, as you know, some cultures, the way they greet each other is different. Maybe circumcision. Circumcision was universal for both male and female in Somalia. But this practice has recently been stopped for the females because of the problems they encounter during their menstrual cycle, or even when giving birth to a child. But still, it is common for the boys, or childbirth, or should I talk about marriages, pregnancies, what you name it. So in today's presentation, we'll talk a little bit about everything, but very brief. This is a Somali map. Geographically, Somalia is a very narrow country that wraps around the Horn of Africa, bordering Ethiopia, Kenya, and other countries. It happens to have the longest coastline of any African nation. We also have two chief rivers, the Shabelle River and the Juba River. And many people live in the valleys of these rivers because their main livelihood depends on irrigation and seasonal crop production. Cultural background. In Somalia, we have two main groups. One group has a cohesive community and live together in permanent agricultural villages, while the other group moves from place to place in search of pasture because they are pastoralists. Because we have two main groups in Somalia, we have or must have two main languages. We have Afmai and Afmaha. Virtually all Somalis will be speaking at least one of these languages. Both languages were official until 1970s, when the government of Somalia determined that the Afmaha, which is the second one, would be the official written language in Somalia. So in the refugee camps, few adults have taken it upon themselves to learn the English language, while others have gained greater proficiency in Swahili language. That is an official language in Kenya, in order to communicate with the Kenyan aid workers, police, and government services. Education in Somalia. Well, the civil war has completely decimated the educational system in Somalia. Now you can guess the focus is basically on survival. But before the war, the educational system was similar to that of the US. Children started at a very young age and graduated from high school, which typically took 12 years, just like here. The Quran was taught. We also had schools that were designed to just learn the proper way of writing and reciting the Quran. But also, in the public schools and other private schools, normal school where you would learn English and everything, the Quran was also taught. But there were some families that were not able to send their kids to Quran school. Therefore, they only depended on the public schools. We had both private school and public schools. So the only real difference between American schools and schools in Somalia is just the way we give consequences. And that is corporal punishment was allowed, was okay in Somalia, but that's not here. Traditionally, people in Somalia believe that or enjoy to eat what they have cultivated with their own hands, hunted, raised, fished. We do not help in Somalia like you can get here in the US, though that depends upon your income and the number of family members you are. So here in America, you have food stamps. You have what we call Social Security income for disabled people or for old people above 65, maybe now 67, I don't know. You have Medicare or Medicaid. You have Section 8 vouchers if you don't have proper housing. There we don't. Or you have public housing. So the only help we have there is help from your neighbor, from your parents, relatives, or friends. So, for instance, if I don't have enough food, I feel very confident to go to my neighbor and say, hey, I wanted to make some rice, but it happens that I don't have rice, so do you have some? Oh, here you go. So, and if you, like I said, I brought Coca-Cola today because I didn't have a tea bag. But in Somalia, that's a simple thing. You can go to your neighbor, hey, I need a tea. Oh, here you go. So that's boundaries. We have that connection. That is the help we normally get from neighbors, friends, families. But here, the government does that. Historically, much of the Somali and Somali Bantu culture has its roots in religion, as is the case with many cultures. We have some traditional beliefs from our ancestors. So the Somalis are Muslims. They are moderate in their Muslim beliefs. We pray we have what you call 5 pillars of faith and 6 articles of faith in Islam. And this is the basic rule that any Muslim should follow. So let us talk about the 5 pillars first, and then we'll talk about the 6 pillars. The first 5 pillar is Shahada. That is the declaration of faith. The second one is Salat. That is praying 5 times a day. So we have to pray 5 times a day. Right now, the morning prayer is around 5:50, just because the time's changed now. 5:50. The mid prayer is around 1 o'clock. An evening prayer is about 4 o'clock. The other one should happen actually right now as I speak. And the one after this one is at 8 o'clock. So we have to wake up early to get ready for prayer and all that. So, and this is the 5 basic rule in Islam. So the third one is zakat. We have zakat and sadaqah. Zakat is a rule that you have to follow. Sadaqah is a choice. And the difference between the two is zakat is like if you're a wealthy person, or even if you saved like $10,000 this year, and if that $10,000 gets to next year, there is a certain percentage that comes out from there and you have to give to the poor people. Or otherwise it becomes haram. And the sadaqah, which it's your choice, is what you can give to your friend, to the poor people. Even if you don't have anything, a smile is also a sadaqah. Whereby the zakah, if you don't have anything, then it doesn't apply to you. The fourth one is Som. That is fasting the month of Ramadan. Fasting for 30 days. I will talk a little bit about that going forward. And the last one is Hajj, going to Mecca once in your lifetime. Again, this also depends upon your financial burden. I mean, if you don't have the financial means to do that, you're not required. You know yourself. But if you do, then you have to. Once some people do 3 times. We have some elders here that live in Vermont that did 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, still doing it. But the requirement is only 1 time. So the 6 articles of faith is, the first one is believing in one God, the only one worthy of worship. Second, believing in the existence of angels. Thanks for correcting it. I wrote believing in the existence of angels, and then Sean corrected that. Believing in the books sent by God. Books that was given to Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Abraham, Jacob, all of them. Believing in all the prophets. By name, 25 have been mentioned in the Quran, but we believe there are thousands of them sent throughout the world. But by name, 25 in the Quran. Believing in the day of judgment, and also believing in destiny, hell or heaven. Major holidays we celebrate these are religious holidays: Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr, which comes after Ramadan, and then Eid al-Adha, which comes after Eid al-Fitr, 2 months after Eid al-Fitr. We also have other important life cycle rituals, like celebrating the birth of a child, marriage, circumcision, harvest time, and New Year. What is Ramadan? Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar based on the lunar system. So this month we fast for 30 days. That means staying away from food or drink. And when I say drink, I mean drinking water or juice and something like that. Not alcohol. Alcohol is completely forbidden. So this is the month that the Quran has been revealed. And basically this month is a self-reflection. It's like to serve yourself to feel how, so that you feel how the poor people feel. So if you're starving yourself for 30 days, for a whole month, from sunrise to sunset, then the mentality of it is just that you will feel how people on the streets or other people feeling when they don't have anything to eat. So this month we also have to pay fitr, which is a treat. Give money to people, give clothes, everything. So after that comes Eid al-Fitr. These are days when we celebrate after Ramadan. This occurs at the end of Ramadan. We celebrate together with festival. We visit each other, give gifts to each other. Parents stay home from work. This is a day when I feel out, you know. Hey, I can come today, it's Eid. So children stay home from school, basically to celebrate. That's why you see a lot of Muslim kids don't really come to school this day. And we pray together in large gatherings. And then after that Eid comes to Eid al-Adha, which is like 2 months after Eid al-Fitr. So this Eid is the major Eid. In this Eid, basically it honors Prophet Abraham's willingness to sacrifice his son Ismail as an act of submission to God's command. Before then, God intervened through his angel Gabriel, and that he was informed his sacrifice has already been accepted. So during this Eid, we sacrifice an animal. The animal meat is divided into 3 parts. The family retains one third of the share. Another third is given to families, friends, relatives, neighbors. And the remaining third is donated to the poor people or needy people. So we do everything we did in Eid al-Fitr in this Eid too, but this is just extra for this Eid. Dating. For us, the proper way to get married is, if you meet a girl, you think you like her, you go and talk to your parents. Hey, Dad, I like that girl, you know, this. And then your dad or your parents will go and talk to the girl's parents. The bride-to-be is asked if she likes the man who's requesting her for marriage. If she accepts, the wedding takes place. That's how easy it is. But dating is also permitted. No touching, kissing, or similar actions. Adultery is forbidden. This is across the board, but I just threw it in there.
Dalib, can you say a little bit more about haram? You said that earlier in the presentation, and it's there. What's the meaning of haram?
Haram is like something that you have to abstain, something that you have to stay away from. Mm-hmm. Marriage. We have 2 types of marriages. Generally, Somalis believe that what you have stolen is not pure for you. So the 2 types of marriages we have is eloping, that is running away with a girl. It happened here in Vermont several times. Some guy coming from some other state coming here, stealing a girl. Some guy leaving from here, going there, stealing a girl and bringing her here. But this type of marriage is highly avoided. Usually, it happens when the girl and the 2 really love each other, and the parents are not able to come to an agreement, and then they just run away with each other. But the common marriage is the arranged one, where my parents will come to your parents, and then they both agree, and then the marriage thing takes place. So early marriage is common, not so much here in the US, because of the financial things that's associated with that. But back home, if the young couple get married and they don't earn adequate income to sustain themselves, so they get help from parents, relatives, neighbors, and all that. So you're encouraged to really marry young.
And Ellie, when you say young, what age?
As young as 15, you can get married. Mhm. So Somali culture is, and basically that is just so that you don't have unlawful sex is basically the idea of it, and also to have kids at a young age so that they are able to take care of you when you're older. Falling in love, of course, is permitted, and marriage is the only legitimate way to indulge in intimacy. Pregnancy and childbirth. Childbearing starts immediately after marriage. Sometimes a woman's status is enhanced by the number of children she bears. So average family size is 7 to 10 kids. I don't know if that statistics is correct, but the most important thing to grasp from here is that Somali families are big. They have many kids. The concept of planning when to have kids or not to have kids has little cultural relevance for Somalis. So have as many as you can. It's the idea. Though, in the US, that is a little bit changing because mom has to work, dad has to work because of the number of bills they have to pay. Sometimes if only dad is working, that is a little bit changing. Gender roles. Back home, the man normally goes out and earns a living for the family. The mother stays home with the children, takes care of them, and also the house chores. And basically that shifted a little bit here in the US because both parents have to work to make a living, and both also serve as community leaders. Traditional medical practices. I threw that slide in there. I just think it's very interesting. We have local healers that are knowledgeable in different methods, traditional way of treating common diseases like bloodletting, minor injuries, minor surgeries, and other orthopedic complications like bone fractures. These local healers may use heat to treat their patients. They put a flat metal rod into the fire and wait until it's thoroughly heated. And then the heat is applied to the ailing body parts. So it's used for headaches. This has been misinterpreted in the past by service providers because kids come to school with burn marks. Burn marks, that's what it's called, right? And there was a lot of misunderstanding about it. Some people thought that was child abuse. Some people thought that was a neglect and all that. Not just here, but you can also find it on the stomach, around your belly button here, because of stomach ache, sometimes leg pain, chest pain, neck pain. And, these local healers are also knowledgeable in treating certain diseases like diarrhea, hepatitis, TB or tuberculosis, and bronchitis. So generally, Somalis believe that one should only go to a hospital for an acute illness. The common belief is that people cannot prevent disease. So even if a person takes medication and they feel better after taking the medication, this success is also attributed to God, because it's only God that can guarantee good health for individuals. Therefore, they only go to a hospital for an acute illness. So if a Somali person goes to the hospital, that means he's really sick. So healthcare decisions. The other thing is that Somalis don't really accept surgery because they believe that it makes people disabled. Not just that, but also drawing blood at medical, like drawing blood samples at local laboratories. Also, they believe that it causes anemia. But healthcare decisions for the family is made by the father. If the father is not there, the mother makes the decision, elder brother, paternal uncle, and also sometimes community leaders may grant consent for surgeries. Death. Not to anticipate the death of a sick person, even if the person is on life support, and you know, like if this life support thing is taken off, this person dies, we still don't anticipate that. It's the common belief is also that only God knows when somebody really has to die. I was working at IBM at some point and other places, and I came across a friend who told me, hey, I will be out this week because my dad is supposed to die. It took me quite some time to accept that. I said, what do you mean your dad is supposed to die? You're taking a week off. How do you know that your dad is going to die? I mean, it's a sad story. We can't go deep into it, but like Somali person will not say that to you. So we believe that Allah causes all kinds of sickness. Evil spirits cause sickness too. Like an evil person wishing harm for some other person could also be a cause of sickness. For instance, like, you know, this is very common in America, but, you know, hey, your child, that's so big. He looks very beautiful. And Somali person may be saying, because they have been here for quite some time now, and they know what your perception is or what you're implying, they might be okay with that. But if Dalib says, hey, to a Somali person, hey, your child is beautiful, it looks big, that means I'm wishing harm for that person, for that child, so I should not say it. But with the American people, they get it. So after death, if the person that died, the dad or mom, happens to have wealth, so the kids inherit the wealth. And they divide it according to the Islamic faith. And sometimes they just agree that, hey, let us just keep this wealth together and our elder brother takes care of it. And sometimes that is what they do. Challenges in USA. Weather, especially in Vermont. That is always a problem. But I have been getting a lot of good feedback from the community, like the good job that the school is doing in giving them warm clothes and mittens and stuff like that. It's been a lot of help. But it's always a challenge. Homesickness, these are some things that we miss from home. Like the way we celebrated Eid in Somalia or in Kenya is not the same here, because when these days come, not many people actually know about them. So it's kind of sad, but there, like everybody celebrates and we all know and enjoying all that. All the restaurants are closed during the day if it's Ramadan. And then in the evening, they're all open. People are cracking jokes. You don't see that here. So we miss way of life. And, well, some professor in Boston was getting interviewed for a documentary about Somali refugees. And she was asked a question. I don't really have the right phrases, what the question was, but it was something like the challenges that Somali refugees face here. And she said, today in America, it's very difficult to be three things. She said being black, being a Muslim, and also being a refugee. And the unfortunate thing is Somalis are all three. So you can just see from that point of view the kind of feelings Somali refugee might have. So there is some racial profiling, stereotyping, and all that. I mean, some Islamic scholar says that Sheikh Ahmed Didat, his name was, he passed away in 2004, originally from South Africa, but died in, well, actually originally from India, but raised in South Africa and died there. He said every community has a black sheep. So just apply that to that. Some cultural taboos that we experience. Drinking alcohol is forbidden, but you will see some kids or some adults doing that. No use of drugs, no pork products, and parents and children and parents having hard time understanding each other because the kids learn faster than the parents, so there is always a struggle.
What was the previous one, Dolly? Sorry, what was the previous one to this?
The pizza, pork or pork products. Yeah. And the end. If you have any question? If you have any question, I'm willing to answer to the best of my ability.
My question is, and I'm happy to hear that the school district is doing a good job of welcoming the community, but what can the Winooski community and what can we as a school board help with in making the community more welcoming?
One challenge we have is the Coca-Cola thing. You know, there back home, your neighbors are like your parents. Your neighbors are your like sisters, brothers. You depend on them for anything. You need sugar, go ahead, get it from them. You need salt, go get from them. You need this, go get it. Talking, actually trying to bring the community here in Winooski, kind of like intermingle, talk to each other, talk to your neighbors, get to know each other. I think that is what I feel like we need most, because people are really scared to even talk to their neighbors. I have a neighbor, not that I'm a bad person, and not that my neighbor is a bad person, but we both are coming from different culture, and I am a little bit skeptical about him. What is he gonna tell you if you ask a question? He's a little bit skeptical about me. Oh, black person. So, you know, if we can bridge that through, I think it will be one way that I don't know, like how the board can bring the community together in that regard, but I think that would be a great thing. Whether it's organizing a dinner or some project, or just in ways that the community can come together and know about each other. That is
Like,
what I think we
yeah,
lack the most.
Always our challenge.
Right, I think that's this
Yeah.
perennial thing of, and you speak to something that I feel like in America we used to have, and I think we as our own culture has lost that ability in certain places to not know each other and to not know our neighbors. But it is something that is worthy of time and attention to reach out, because we are small here.
Yeah, definitely.
And make a difference.
Well, here's a question, and maybe it's because of our ignorance that we don't know.
Let me maybe comment to what Ms. Cleland said.
Yeah, well done. Tori, yeah.
Well, I work with a wonderful group of people, and one happens to be Tool. We always talk and chat about differences and all that. And he recently bought a house at North End, there in Burlington. And he says he has a neighbor on the left, and he has another neighbor, another house on the right. So the one on the left has a dog named Sarah or something to the effect. Very big dog, he says. So when I first moved in there, it always barks. Scaring me. Now it has been 3 years. Sarah still doesn't know me. So you can just see, like, they really don't talk. They really don't. And he tried to approach the other person. Okay. So there wasn't really something that would encourage you to even go and introduce yourself to this person, because now that you're a neighbor. So also, I understand. I mean, the U.S., there were certain things that were in place here that are not anymore. So I understand that, just because people work hard and people work every day, and sometimes you feel like you don't have time for each other.
Right, well said.
So my question was more on the level, we try to do community dinners and set times. Are there certain times of the day that we should be aiming for that is a little bit more respectful?
Evening.
And when you say evening, like what time in the evening?
Right, because there's prayer in the evening that a lot of the dinners, you were saying that prayer time right now, like 6 o'clock, so we're
obviously choosing the bad times because we're hitting.
I think so, actually. I spoke the bad time right now because I missed the prayer.
Yeah, and
the
we
only
apologize.
excuse you have, no, that's fine. The only excuse you have to miss a prayer is either you forget intentional, well, how do you say it? Unintentionally, or you oversleep. Those are the only good reasons you can miss. Even if you are really sick on your bed, you still have to pray. Like, you don't have to stand up and do all that, but you can pray with your mind. You can pray with your fingers if you can do. If you have the conscience, you have to do it. So yeah, so scheduling dinner times we'll have to consider the prayer time, and oftentimes that's a challenge. But if we know what the prayer time is, we can schedule it at a time when like the community can come. But when it gets to the close to the prayer time, we can just let everybody go. Like for instance, if it's now it's a little bit dark right now, but just say if the prayer time was 7 o'clock, we could schedule something like 5 o'clock, and then they can show up 5, 6, and then by 7 o'clock, they can all go home and or do their prayer, or even offer them a place to pray there. That would also be another important thing. Yeah, it changes throughout the year. Now that we got 1 hour increased, and then it also increased to 1 hour. So now the morning prayer is 5:50, if I remember correctly. I do it every morning, and I still don't remember. So 5:50, say. It used to be 6:50. Is it? Yeah, 6:50. 6:50, but now it's. Hold on, do I have that right?
The other way.
Because it just switched last weekend.
We went forward.
Yeah, we are forward. So it was 5:50. So now it's
6:50.
6:50, is it? Yeah. So I don't know. But yeah, it also changes, and it's important. Like when you're doing all the planning and stuff like that, and you talk to me or somebody from the community, and they will tell you it's not like a big of. It's just like they have the app in their phones, and they can just simply check it. It's not really something that's that complicated.
Does fasting during Ramadan apply to all ages or just adults?
Fasting starts. It will become must for you when you turn 15. Well, yeah, when you turn 15. But before 15 years of age, you have to learn and get into the routine and stuff like that. But it applies to everybody, except when the females have their menstrual cycle, then you can fast. But they still have to make up. So say like you have to fast that 30 days, and you are on your menstrual cycle for 7 days. You don't have to fast that period of time, but then next month or the month after, or whenever it feels comfortable, you have to make up that 7 days. But it's compulsory for everyone to fast. And some old people, really old, if they came fast, they have to feed. The ruling is like you have to feed 30 people. I mean, you can't really feed 30 people in the US, but you can send some money to Africa where the money value is a little bit higher, and then you have to feed 30 people. Or you have to do what you can, like maybe feed 3 people, whatever the equivalence is, comparing to the 30 people, the amount of money that you're going to use here, if you're really old. And if you're really pregnant and you fear for your child, you also don't have to fast. But again, you have to make up.
As a district and as a community as a whole, what can you help us with understanding what the needs of your community are? In general, just some of the things that we may or may not do well.
I can't really say this, that, but one thing is actually coming together and knowing each other. I think we lack that most. And we acknowledge Ramadan time. I mean, the kids here get a safe space to be when the other students are eating lunch in the cafeteria, and they have a place to pray here. And so I think the school in general is doing a good job dealing with this community. But the only thing I see we lack is knowing about each other. They're out in the community.
To take one thing out of this meeting is 1 or 2 steps we can take to move closer in that direction until somebody says, let's go forward and find a way to get together. It would be nice to be able to take a couple of actions, at least to say, how do we do that? A community dinner is, the one piece that we've done in the past, but it's usually revolved around a budget to get information out, not necessarily just to bring people together. right? I don't know if that even helps.
Well, I think one thing we could do that we had started and we haven't gotten back to is the Paul Bourne book on deepening community, right? Which talks a lot about, I think, what Dalib has described, and finding ways that we commune. So we do things together, and that's how we get to know each other. It's not these more kind of formal, sometimes uncomfortable ways where we're like forcing the integration. And that's what he talks about. And I think about what Danielle Jatlow and Masidi did with some Somali Bantu women, where they were doing the traditional needlepoint, right? And so just getting together and creating something together and having informal talk and basing it around something where maybe the minority culture has some competence and expertise and that the majority culture can learn from, and then that frees up the informality of the conversation when people get comfortable.
That's a good point, because we often are trying to bring people into an uncomfortable area into it, and I guess my question is are there anything that us as school board members, first as a kind of a test, can be invited to your community and just be observant or being part of it to learn, just create a smaller buffer first before we try to bring the full integrations? And if there's anything that you can think of that will help with that, like whether it's the community, I like when you go out and do those type of communications, I would be more than happy to come join you to, because to help. I think part of it is that we have to break down the barriers of the formality that you talk about, Sean, and so and it's an important step.
Yep.
Yeah. We had a year where women got together. We called ourselves a Circle of Sisters, and it happened for a year where it was women from the school who also practice Islam, and then us white women, and we would have dinner once a month. And we did it. We pulled it out. We'd have a lot of the dinners at the mosque and pray together, and it was wonderful. And then organizationally, like once we started having space between it, it became hard to keep up, but it was a time and a place where it was really just about getting to know each other and being able to jump into each other's routines and worlds and lifestyles and sort of see things from other sides. And that's one way of having small groups together where we get to kind of know our neighbors. But it does take the intention to keep it going and to keep moving together.
The other thing
Yeah,
to bring
we can-
Sophia into the conversation, the students in the district do a good job of actually getting to know each other. But I mean, what is it? Just the notion that you're all there together? Is there a way that you all can bring us together too, in some ways, in the community? Because you're the model of what diversity is about, and actually practicing inclusion in excellence and all that. And sometimes I'm trying to figure out how, if y'all can do it, how do we get the community to do more of it?
We like having just adults, not like children, because usually when parents bring children to the events, they focus more on their children and not other people, so they don't communicate.
Sometimes providing childcare too, so that the parents will have and they're comfortable that their children are.
Do you find do y'all get together outside of school?
Sometimes.
Right, getting to know other people's families and connecting in that way?
No, not really. I think mostly a lot of people can connect during sports. My friend Aubrey, she made friends so easily when she joined sports.
And that again is a situation where you're all there for a common purpose, right?
Right.
The school, you're here, sports, there's a common purpose in all of it. So.
That mechanism that's kind of bringing each in for a common purpose, right? Yeah.
I think it's awkward from both sides to get that first start, get things moving. Certainly, it will. All right.
Thank
Anything-
you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, next on the agenda, public comments. Have any public comments? Seeing none. All right, into the consent agenda. Few different items in there this month. I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 7A, we had said we were gonna move the co-principal introduction. Sean, turn this one to you.
All right, so before we do the big intro here, I wanted to just remind the board, I've been updating you over the past few months through my report of the process that took place. We were fortunate to have an incredible committee of 16 of us from the school, including Amy Lothrop as the parent representative, Azizar and Hussein Murray as our excellent student representatives, and J.C. Putlitz, our wellness coordinator, Courtney Paquette, our high school business teacher, and Kirsten Colgard, who are all here tonight to support Gene's, not only his nomination, but you just approved the consent agenda, so he has been officially approved. So congratulations, Gene Berthium, and Gene comes to us with 13 years of experience as a high school social studies teacher down in Harwood. He has been the principal at Fayston for the past 8 years and is currently and finishing his last year there and coming to us. And he also he was a Rowland Foundation Fellow and has been a senior associate there for 10 years now. And I would tell you that this process was really rigorous. We started out with 36 applications. We kind of culled that down to the committee reviewing about 23 and then choosing 8 interviewees. We had 3 finalists who endured full 9-hour days here, starting with the high school faculty in the morning and then finishing back up with the interview committee and meeting with parents. A couple of board members had some opportunities to meet with them, go to classes, meet with a variety of stakeholders over the course of the day. We were fortunate to have great applicants and excellent finalists, and we're just really, really excited that Gene is going to be coming to us as the co-principal with primarily responsibility for the high school. He is very excited to get back into secondary school after being at a K-8 school for the last 8 years. And he just brings, I think, what, as the committee, I think I can speak for the committee, he brought an incredible ability to communicate in a way that is clear and that people want to hear what he has to say and listen to him. He has tremendous compassion that plays out in his presence. He went straight to students in the interview and during his visit here, and people noticed that. Students were able to give feedback on a form, and that was a theme that arose, was he was really interested in me and like what's happening in my classes, what's happening outside my classes. So we are hiring somebody that I think is an outstanding fit for us and who is also going to learn a lot from being here and just have a wonderful, wonderful leadership tenure. So welcome and thank you for being with us. Gene Berthium. Thank you.
That was a really kind one. I have to say that there's a lot to be said about the process, and this process was a real reciprocal piece for me. Like it allowed me to also assess my own fit for this community, and I know I tried to put myself out there as honestly as I possibly could, and I walked away from my full day here just feeling alive. Like every experience and every interaction I had with this community validated my belief that this was the right place for me. I know this is going to be challenging, but I accept those challenges. This is a real connected community. I loved this presentation that we just got to take in, and how much we learn from our diversity, and how much of those cultural exchanges can we nurture and facilitate so that we're serving each other well. So, and it was so funny. This is a little side story. I don't know how much time I have. I don't even know if I should say it. Please do. Just, no problem. There's got to be a cane someplace. But my partner, who teaches at UVM, has designed this course for pre-service teachers and their middle-level teachers. And so every Friday is either a community-based learning experience, and the Friday after my Friday here, he was here with his students. And so he was hemming and hawing, and we're, you know, as partners are, we're thinking about this big change in our lives, in my life. And he calls me midday, and he goes, "You need to be here. This is the place to be." And so I was like, I needed my partner's validation in that, because I've been trying to convey to him what I was gaining from my every interaction in this process of this hiring process. So I'm really appreciative of being here. I just told my staff yesterday, and I know, Sean, you've been in these shoes before, but it felt, it was hard for my staff to be excited for me, because it was just a level of reality check for them. But I know that in time, they understand that I'm aspiring to be in a secondary world again. So I'm really eager to work with amazing teachers and a community and student body that is pretty exceptional in my mind. So I'm looking forward to digging in. I know that the next few months are going to be challenging, and try to keep up with what's going on in Winooski at the same time maintaining my full-time. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excited.
As a life, one quick statement I have to. I can't refrain, sorry. As a lifer in this community, I've seen a lot go on in this school. The last principal hire before this was done pretty deeply by the board and not by as much the staff. They did have a say.
The high school principal
The high
hire,
school,
not
yeah.
Sarah.
Yeah, sorry. And actually it was the one before that even.
Oh.
Going back even further. What I'm getting to is that the process of having Sean and the staff do that hire got us Leon prior. He was exactly what we needed for a calming influence at the time he came on, and he drove us forward. We're now at a point where it has to go from here, and we certainly are looking forward to seeing some great things with a great staff. But we've kind of come to now expect that, just because of the great things we have seen. So, no pressure, of course. But my analysis is, my analogy is when we first, it was 10 years ago, and everybody has pointed in a different direction. Change a principal every 2 years, change a superintendent the other 2 years. Direction given this year is like, okay, whatever, next year it'll change. So you can never make a course correction, because you make a course correction from everybody doing this and it looks like that. At least now I firmly believe we're all heading in the same direction. Have no idea yet if that's the right direction. It's a better direction, and you can make course corrections. So we really look forward to seeing that move forward. Appreciate it. Welcome aboard.
I have to just say that Sean's reputation is something I considered as well. I mean, there are so many people when I've started to be able to tell people I was a finalist and it was about to be real. There was a lot of admiration for Sean's integrity and his leadership, and so that's important. Having a real leader at the helm to bring us together. And looking forward to working in one building with other administrators and teachers and students to make this happen.
Quality of staff and our ability to attract and retain great people is highly dependent on all of us. So that.
I agree. I wanted to say one thing about that. I mean, I have been here for now like 15 years. No parent ever approached me saying good comments about a superintendent except Sean in the course of 15 years that I was here. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Go team.
Thank you guys for coming out in
Yes.
support of,
Thank
in
you.
support of
Appreciate
Gene
it,
tonight.
Delegate.
Appreciate
Yes,
that.
Thank you. All right, let's see, we're in 7, capital project update.
Superintendent monitoring report, I think is next.
Oh, what did I miss?
The,
Oh,
thought we were on executive limitations.
yes, sorry, executive lim, I went one down too far. So, well, the monitoring report this time is asset protection.
Yes.
And then again, a reminder as we read through these, and reading, some of the things that we've said, we are evaluating Sean on essentially 1/8 of his performance and what we expect when we do these. So when we do read them, understanding that these are the things we've tasked Sean with, his response to us and how we do. And at the end of the year, when we do the evaluation, we do the summation of all of these things together. So keeping those in mind as we read these, any comments?
A whole lot of compliance.
It's, maybe I'm just nitpicking.
Nope.
I think,
It's your job.
yeah, I
It's all
guess.
discussion at this point.
Yeah, I've been thinking about 5 a lot on page 2,
Okay.
about making purchases without having attained comparative prices and quality. And I wonder if we need to put a clause about this for emergency situations and
Which section is this, sorry, again? 5.
5
Yeah.
on page 2 of this,
Yep.
it says, make any purchase where normally prudent protection has not been given against conflict of interest. But it's the B part of over 15,000 without having attained comparative prices and quality. Orders should not be split to avoid these criteria. And the only reason I'm thinking about this is because of our, attempt to build hockey rinks. Or
Right,
the pipes
right.
and I totally understand why you had to do it, but
Yeah,
and
so I think I have a good response for that. So there's 2 things you could do. You could either add language with that kind of exception here.
right.
Or, actually, there's 3 things. Or we could cite the state statute that actually does include an allowance for emergencies.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just seems like we need. I just want to protect you because I know that you didn't do
Mhm.
this out of harm, and I'm not trying to say
Right,
anything.
right.
But I think we need a clause out in case of these situations.
It would probably make the most sense just to cite
Good thoughts.
what already has been said about that.
Per something.
Right, what would you say it came out of?
The state statute.
Yeah, it's state
Yeah, yeah,
statute
yeah.
around the bidding
Emergencies.
Right.
that says, except in case of emergency. I don't know what the
Because I think this is
Yeah.
part,
statute is off the top of my head, but.
this particular piece with getting the bids over 15,000, that's a requirement, right? You gotta
Right.
get
Right.
the 3
Yep.
bids, and if you
Yes.
don't, you get exclusions, but this is about the emergency piece,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, this is clearly. I just want to make sure that
Yep.
there's an out for you
Yep.
on extreme emergency situations.
So if the board agrees, what I could do is I could bring this back, I could research that, and either, if it's simple, I can just revise it and put in consent for you next month, or if there's some options for you to review, I could give you the options in the April packet, and then you could have it for a discussion and action next month.
I think I would like to have, because we're changing because we're changing the policy itself, I don't want to do that through consent. I want to use our discussions and approvals. I'm throwing this out there but it can be too easy to make the changes, put them in consent, approve them in consent, and not discuss them. For policy changes, I'd like to have that be the discussion, the full-blown, bring the policy back, talk about the policy, not the interpretation. Tonight would be the interpretation. We can bring it back, and that's what I want to do is, if we have any issues with these things, bring the policy back and discuss it. We haven't done a lot of it, which is
Right.
kind of a testament to what we came up with in the first place, but it's there, and I think in this case, I don't think it's nitpicking. I think it's something we should consider.
So bring it back next month with both the policy revision and with with that policy revision included in the monitoring report and do them both. Is that what I heard you saying?
I think, no, your interpretation is against this policy as it is written now.
Okay.
What I would advocate for is us coming up with what would we want it to be, and then the next time you do it,
Okay.
have that be one of, a part of your interpretation. And that way we keep things, if we move your target every time you try to aim at it,
Yeah,
that's
no, that- and that would be wrong, right.
that's a setup for failure, and I don't wanna,
Yep.
I don't wanna put ourselves in that position either.
Okay.
So should we, I guess, to Sean's comment though, should we be the ones adjusting the wording on the policy and bringing it back to us? Rather than having Sean go and update the policy for,
No, I think
think-
it should be us, but
Yeah.
with Sean's guidance, I'm
Yeah.
hoping, like
Yeah.
he can pinpoint the state law that allows us to do, just to make it easier, because I don't know if I really have the time and energy to go
Yeah,
research
that's,
the
Right.
state
that's
law.
my work.
so I can spend some time making sure that we get the right wording to come back, or options and wordings to come back to when we review the policy next time. And again, next time it'll be just the policy, just the wording, just the intent.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it'll be next year when you go through to,
Yep.
to do the analysis. Does that work? That
That's
sound-
good to me.
And then,
That's kind of a nutshell of this whole thing. That's the whole. I did have one comment here. Let me see if I can decipher it from what I was doing.
I have one more comment.
Yep, go ahead.
So under 6 in your interpretation, I'm fine with all the interpretation of it, but food for thought is that, can you think about, like education on phishing schemes? I've just been thinking a lot because the recent higher ed, there was a hacking incident that involved like, students being able, someone hacked into the admission systems where they now were selling students, admissions results, and it wasn't because of security on the software, it was because of someone leaving passwords
Yeah.
of it or phishing schemes. And
No, it's a good point, because what the issues that we've had is, we've had hacking where they, there's an email that comes from me to staff asking them for phone numbers or asking them to do things that require money.
Right.
And we've done a lot of work, kind of the internal communication about how to know when something is phishing or whatever and how to report it and so forth. But, so do you think that should be, are you saying that
No, just in your interpretation, just like if you've done it, if you haven't, maybe in the next round, to think
Okay.
about that. And like I said, I don't want to go into the detail. I know this is getting
Yeah.
into it, but just food for thought as in your work, have you thought about the phishing? Or maybe you have and you haven't mentioned it here.
No, I mean, in my mind, the hacking would include phishing.
Yeah, and I think of phishing separate because it's hacking is like going through other people and like really going into the system. Phishing to me is another specific of helping educate the users
Okay.
around, and I worry about that just because it seems like that's actually, we often think about the technological security, but a lot of it is, a lot of the hacking that does occur is actually human error. And it's the education of the human error that
Yeah.
that we should be worried about. And so, and from reading your, theft, losses, fire, and viruses, like those are usually like going to attack the technological system. But how are we educating the users?
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Just
Great.
food for thought.
Yeah.
Good insight.
That's personal growth as well. Not just protecting the facility, right? But it's in their personal lives. It's
Well,
it's
there
a big
literally
deal,
have been
too.
school districts that have been held, for ransom, and they have paid ransom.
And I think it's because
In
someone.
Massachusetts, I haven't heard any in Vermont, but yeah.
And it's because people probably left like their passwords are made easy passwords,
Yep.
right? And
It's a good point, thanks. And I did, again, I almost always forget this finance manager support letter, and I apologize for that. So I handed that out to you because it's referenced in the monitoring report.
And you'll have that attached when
Yes,
you
when it gets
post it.
posted, yeah.
All right. Good. Anything else with regards to the interpretation, evidence, compliance? All right. So I would accept a motion to accept the monitoring report for asset protection policy 2.6 as written. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. If I can remember to keep myself oriented here, we, in 7, capital project update would be next.
So included in your packet was the communication schedule, and as you can see, we have a number of tours starting tomorrow night over the course of March and April, and then 2 community breakfasts and 1 community dinner that are scheduled. In addition to that, I have also separate tours that are set up for, we'll do something with the press. That invitation has been set out today to the Free Press, PTZ, CAX, and Fox 44, ABC 22. I have the education liaisons from Leahy, Sanders, and Welch's office coming because there is it's still on the table federally for earmarks. And given that Leahy is a senior senator on the Appropriations Committee, that's a possibility that we could get some sort of support that way. Tomorrow, I've been invited to go to Montpelier and testify to House and Senate Ed on construction aid, because there's that bill that our reps co-sponsored and Martin Lalonde originated out of South Burlington. So we're working that angle. Matt Webb and I will be kind of rejuvenating the neighborhood conversation model that was used years ago with Nellie Mae around the construction of the graduate expectations and the end statement, and we're going to shape that for the capital project. And we already have, I think, 4 families who have volunteered to hold those in their homes, and we'll be asking all of you if you would be willing to do that too. And that would be slated for kind of the last couple weeks of April leading up to the May vote. In addition to, the website's running, we'll be, posting social media posts, the videos. We have a few other short vignette videos that we'll start to share more frequently. But we're after the budget vote and now kind of getting back into the swing here. It's going to be full court press for the next 8 weeks or so.
Chance, do you have the Google Analytics on for our website?
I do.
Are they looking good, or?
So the ones I've been paying attention to most was like the video, and it's up around 320 views of the video.
It's really good video.
It is a good video. I'm surprised
With 3
that
people,
yeah.
Oh, we got to push it out.
That's us.
Yeah.
It's,
Do you think it'll help to get the media in for tour?
I
And so
do.
that we can,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm surprised that it hasn't happened yet.
When's the tour for the media?
March 25th is when the invitation is for, yeah.
Yeah, it's fabulous footage. It's
Yeah.
it's very compelling and tells the story.
Well, one of the things that was interesting to me, I stopped and got a bagel this morning on the way in, and I ended up being there for 45 minutes and talking to 3 different parents about the project. So I'm like, I need to get bagels more often. Maybe I need to go down to like Scout and, down to the community coffee that Sister Pat runs, instead of expecting everybody to come here for the tours, get out into those places a little bit more. So I'm gonna do that.
the state aid for school funding is a big deal. When you put together budgets every year and you're trying to keep them lean, there's little to nothing left for, general upkeep and improvements if you need them. So, all right, and we can talk after. I'm free for a lot of those tours. I want to make sure we got enough help so we can.
Yeah, we got a lot of the slots filled in at the committee meeting yesterday. We're in pretty good shape for staffing those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Any of the education liaisons, ones that bring in the other community members? Because those aren't.
I forgot to mention that. So yes, so we will be doing those, and the liaisons recommended that it was smart to do, have them bring their specific cultural community in and give them a separate tour and presentation. So I'm going to be doing that with them too.
And anything that, in listening to the conversations where maybe we can start breaking down the barriers of
Mhm.
authority here,
Yep.
please don't hesitate to give me those dates or
Okay.
us the dates,
Yep.
and hope that
Right.
we can
Right.
Yeah.
attend those. Because I think for a lot of us, I think it's because, it's scary. Board of
Right.
trustee, board, school board, like who are
Mhm.
these people? I think we can kind of start.
Yeah. Yeah, these dates are all will be publicized, and you'll see them on Front
Right.
Porch Forum and other
Last couple of
places.
days.
The other ones I will share with the board too, so if anybody's available just to come, and then
Yeah.
particularly if one of you guys is available, having been on the committee, it'd be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to see you put them, at least these at 5:30. That certainly helps a great deal.
And hopefully we can apply some of the lessons of like the prayer if we
Mhm.
have to.
Right, to the timings.
To the timings,
Yep.
just so that we can say that we heard,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and if you can put that in the communications, that would also be
Yep.
helpful.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Here we go. Push between now and May.
Right.
All right. The adopt of the ballot language, so we got to set a date. 30 days 40 days in advance
In
of
between
the-
30 and 40, so we've got to publicize the ballot language in between that 30 and 40 days prior to the vote, and we're looking at May 7th as the vote. Could possibly be May 14th, but
we can't
we wanna
get to our
be on
next
the-
meeting to do it.
so you
is
can't
the
get to your
point.
April meeting, so you're going to have a special meeting to finalize that language.
At that meeting, we're also finalizing how much we're really asking for.
That's basically there's some specific language that has to be included around what you're asking for, like renovation, expansion, and even a little more detail than that. But the number is the big piece, yes.
Well, I know and I bring that up to the board here because like they're really two plans.
Yep.
Right? And one's 57, one's 55.
55 and 50, yeah, 57, right.
Right, and I think in the next month, as we're doing the tours, like let's try to make sure we pay attention and come to that meeting and make a decision.
Whose decision is it between the two plans?
Ultimately, we have to bring forward a dollar value. So the decision between the two plans is, well, there's multiple ones, right? It's either one or the other, or a third, potentially something else. Drop this, add that, and in the whole plan, what do you do?
So we need to
So-
have that in our heads, an idea of what we're gonna do, or is that meeting on April 3rd gonna be the time for us to get down to basics between the two plans and those options?
Yes and yes. I think you would be looking towards your two board members who have been a part of that committee and probably been more involved in these things to turn to the rest of the board and say, we're recommending this.
Okay.
And the way that it has been discussed in committee, and from what I've heard in my individual meetings with people in the community and at some of the tours, is that I wouldn't necessarily say you're going to either pick 55 or 57. You may pick a different number, and the level of planning that's been done so far in those concepts, that can be revised. It's still at a pretty high level. And you have to think about we're committing this new development position to really going after fundraising dollars for this. The financial modeling that we've been doing is really based on 50 million because it's a nice round number. But ultimately you'll have to select the number.
So on April 3rd, we're having this big conversation based on the recommendations that you guys can bring to us based on all the work. We
And
have
the
our
feedback we get as we go through the
Right,
tours
right.
and.
And is there been feedback that you're specifically collecting to help inform that decision?
So the feedback that I've been collecting and kind of sharing with the committee along the way, the general feedback has been very supportive of this. It's a lot of money.
But
And so that, people are saying, I'm not so sure about, 55, 50, so I think that's been the theme.
But has there been specific feedback gathered in terms of within what pieces and parts would you choose or not choose? Like, we haven't been,
No,
No,
and
okay.
that hasn't necessarily, that's that can be a slippery slope. When you start
course.
asking the community, well, would you rather do the elementary or the middle school?
yeah, and I'm not
So we
suggesting, I'm
haven't
just
gone to that
wondering what
level.
feedback has been gathered from the community for us to use on April 3rd to get incredibly specific to the point that it's on the ballot in terms of numbers and decisions.
It's going to be mostly kind of I've done a report with the committee, I think once or twice based on my individual meetings on the tours, and I've given them the themes that I've collected from
Okay.
that feedback. So that's basically what it would be.
Okay. Okay.
But it could also be you guys asking the people that I think in the community, like, do you know about it? If you don't, go to one of the tours, let me know what you think, so that you would also have some feedback from.
I mean, the people that I talked to or I've sent to, they're like, we didn't know it was this crowded,
Right.
right? They're not as worried about, from the people I get, they're not worried about the money, but I don't get to talk to the longtime Winooski residents. Those aren't the people that I'm worried about the people who see, they see the need for 25 million. Because they, it's not that hard to show them, like, hey, we have gotten parts that are now outlasted their lifespan, and that, like, maintaining them costs more money than replacing them.
Right.
Or that, right? But I haven't heard about, like, but should we expand the school, right? And whereas the people that I've talked to have made the logical argument, you built the school for 600 people and there's 900 people.
Right.
They're looking at me going like, yeah, it makes sense to expand, to give the space, right? And so, but like I said, I think I'm talking to different people than.
Right, so I think it's a lot
Folks.
deeper discussions as we go through this next round of tours and presentations and getting the conversation going, right? Of what it is, what it isn't, and what it does for us.
And we're going to have that conversation before the community dinners start, the community conversations start. Am I getting
I
that timing
think
right? Because it looks
that-
like on April 3rd,
We
we're
have to
getting
have a-
completely specific.
Right.
Yeah, so you'll have only had one community breakfast. I mean, well, that's the second one, actually.
It'll be the
'cause
second
we
one.
did one in January.
Which is on my 50th birthday.
Oh, welcome to the club.
Not yet, not yet. But that's interesting too, that we do need to get that language before we're having sort of dinner conversations or community conversations around it, so that will behoove us to get out and try to hear
Right.
more.
And at that point, it becomes a very specific discussion about what is and what isn't and going on, right? After the 3rd,
Yeah.
it is set.
And we won't have any idea what funds will have been available by that time either.
No, so what we will know by then is whether or not the proposed bill around school construction aid has made it to crossover or not.
Okay,
If
so
it
that would-
makes it to crossover, it means it still has a chance to be, formally legislated this session. If it doesn't, then it won't happen for next year.
Okay. And then our legislature, you're talking about Leahy.
No, I'm
Welch,
talking about
okay.
the state level
The state,
bill.
but
Yeah.
then we won't have any information either about the appropriations from Leahy, Welch, and Sanders.
I would doubt we'd have much
Okay.
clarity around
Okay.
that by then. Yeah.
So anyway, it's almost like creating our yearly budget, that numbers could possibly change in our favor, once
Well,
we,
what we will be able to
Or
fund
not in our favor.
outside of the local funding, right? What we're gonna pay off the top would come from from those discussions.
right.
So
But what's gonna be on the ballot, we won't be able to include, we won't know what we can reduce based on these possibilities.
that'll happen after.
Because yeah, exactly.
No,
Yeah.
but part of the messaging during the presentations and so forth and on the slides in the website is, the first slide in the borrowing assumptions is how can we reduce the impact on the taxpayers, and it
Right.
talks about,
The options.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
And one of the things that we need to emphasize when we're out there and talking about this is that none of this is reactionary, and all of it is, and this is kudos to your team and the capital planning team, and I'm not taking, I wasn't a latecomer, but the thoughtfulness in the planning from the design of the school, of involving the community to, you know, everything I've always said when I do, it's easy to do a presentation when I can say, the elements of the values of the school are built into the design, to how we even think about funding. I mean, as a school board here, we have been thinking about, hey, let's get a communications and development to help lower the cost. Hey, let's think about, like, we have gotten our state legislators to pass a bill, or to at least propose a bill, and we've gotten, you know, you're working already the centers on the earmarks on that. So that's the emphasis that we have to say, that this, none of this is like, you know, ooh, we were shocked.
Right.
It's the intentionality of the planning, and I think in some ways that can help lower the shock value of the ask that we're asking, because we are putting a lot of eggs in many baskets and thinking about funding this. Because I am scared too about 55, 50, right? I believe in it, but I also thought about the intent. But you can't predict everything that you've said.
Right. And one of the key things, you know, that we have added to the borrowing assumption slides, and I don't know that all of you are aware of that, is because we are a receiving school district and city, funds for our school budget annually, about 40% of that come from Winooski taxpayers, and 60% of it come from outside of the city. So when you think about that, there is support, and that's the way our funding system is set up, to support communities that may not have the same median incomes and resources that other cities do. And that's something that I'm very, very clear that most people in our community do not understand that.
No, I don't think, have we ever highlighted that?
So when you think about how this plays out over the course of a 30-year bond, what that means is, when you look at, for most of the bond, it would, the way we have it modeled now, it's about $890,000 a year. 40% of that each year is coming out of local taxes. The rest of it is being supported by outside the city taxes.
Okay.
So April 3rd, is that a?
Yep, this is April 3rd, work, it's a Wednesday.
I know I'm gonna be in Brattleboro at night, so, I mean,
Okay.
it's okay.
Are you busy? Can you join remotely, or you got
I could probably join remotely.
things going on?
Yeah.
It depending on where you are, it can be difficult, but I've tried it a couple of times, failed once, and the other time wasn't too bad. So
Yeah.
if it's something that, you know, we can at least have you try, and if you're free. I mean, I don't know what you got going on. I know things change, so, but it's an option.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so, I would accept a motion to set up a board meeting for April 3rd to adopt ballot language for the bond vote.
So moved.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. so we
What
will-
time, 6:30?
We will do the same, 6:30, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, make sure I keep up with my changes and adjustments here. We did move out the school calendar discussion, we moved in the Funfair update discussion. Sean, if you wanna give a little background and, an update.
On the water main?
Oh, right, the water main first, but no.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the water main, we had intended to come to you this month and ask you for the funds out of capital reserve to pay for this last water main break. And we've yet to settle on a bill with ASE. So that's why we asked to change it to discussion. So not discussion about that bill. We are we are still in process with ASE about getting that for you, and we are confident that we will have it for you, whatever it may look like, in April. The other things I just wanted to remind people of is that the first break, you approved the capital reserve for that, and we have applied and been accepted for up to 30% reimbursement from the state. They have a fund for emergency repairs.
Wow.
Mike and I will be signing something tonight. It doesn't require the whole board to act on it, so that we can apply for up to 30% reimbursement on the second one. And of course, we will, when we get the final bill, submit for that up to 30% on the third one. So that's kind of the things that have happened since we last met around the water main break. And we've been in school, and
Woo.
water's
Well done.
Flowing. All right. So, let's see, I think it would bring us down to the fun,
Funfair
the school
update.
calendar, we moved out to April. That one, that
That's
piece.
what I missed.
Yep, that piece is going out to April, and we're gonna do the fun fair, an update on the issues, from this weekend.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to go through all the communication. I shared the communication with you over the weekend that I put out there, the communication that Sarah put out there, so I think you're well in the loop. I wasn't going to put in all of the other communication that has either come to me, Sarah, or has been posted on social media, and some of you may be familiar with that. What I really wanted to update you on is that the educational side of this was actually pretty good timing, because today in our half day in our professional development, our elementary staff has been working with Dave Melnick from NFI, and they've been continuing their second year working on trauma. And so he focused on racial trauma today with them, and used the experience and the incident and our communications and other things to really talk with the teachers about it and give them a space to talk about it. The middle high school teachers were working with Dr. Marissa Coleman, and the topic today in their overall implicit bias training was white fragility. And so they also used it, very specifically used this specific incident to process that. So I learned a lot from this experience in many different ways, both from the communications that I started getting from people in the community and outside of our community over the weekend. People actually some were very, very kind in sharing resources, and were very supportive for the most part. People were very supportive in the follow-up that I gave them. I responded to all the emails that I got very individually and specifically. I pointed them to our communication, and also answered any of the specific questions that they posed to me. And overwhelmingly, there has been support. There has been some continuation on social media by a very, I'd say 1 or 2 people that I know of, that continue to believe that I did not handle it, that Sarah and I did not handle it well, and never really took responsibility for what happened. My opinion all along, and my position has been that there was no reason to split hairs and quibble about the activity. And there are people in our community who were saying, well, it wasn't a cakewalk, and you're taking away an activity that our kids really like. There was enough connection, I believe, that it was the right thing to do for us to say, no, we're not doing this anymore. The activities in the fun fair have not been updated in a long, long time. We did discover internally that it has been called a cakewalk before. This particular activity has been in existence for over 25 years at the Fun Fair, has changed and shifted how it's been administered at certain times, and been called different things. But that doesn't mean it means anything different to anybody, particularly African Americans that have this terrible racial history with the cakewalk. So I appreciate the support that I got from many of you. Our staff has been really, really supportive and taken it as a real educational opportunity, and I'm proud of our community for the most part.
All right. Any other thoughts, questions? All right. Thank you for the update.
And thanks for the swift,
Concise.
concise addressing of it. And the educational piece to it. I think we all, even as a Southerner, I learned a lot.
All right. We had added 8A, which is a voting delegate for the statewide insurance negotiations. So we just got to nominate someone to be that vote, and like Alex mentioned, we can have that discussion here, come to a consensus on how we want to approve or reject depending on what they come up with, and then it's just a matter of having somebody go say aye or nay when they do it. So
What, for the
We
teacher
just-
negotiation?
yeah, this is for the statewide
Yeah, I have to recuse myself on that.
health insurance negotiation, and just again, it's the voice of the board into the group that's doing the negotiation on whether we accept it or not. So we just need a nomination of a person to do that. It's gonna be just carrying the vote. So. I have no problem.
Does it make sense
I
to
don't-
be you to do that,
yeah,
Mike?
I don't care. I'm good.
I'll do
It's
it.
gonna take about, I'm good with it if that's, I mean, it's not gonna be a time consumer. So I'm not worried
No.
about that.
Mike, yeah.
All
It's
right.
an appointment, so you're appointing
Oh.
yourself.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a.
It doesn't need to be voted on?
No.
Okay. All right, if you guys are okay with that, I don't mind.
Thank you for doing it.
All right. We'll have that discussion long before that, so.
How do I word it?
Appointed Mike.
Matt, appointed for being the voting delegate for statewide teacher
I mean,
benefit.
you could
teacher
certainly vote
benefit
on it if you
negotiations.
want, if you wanted to make it more official, since
If I
you're-
don't have to,
Yeah.
it's all good. And if we have to, we'll come back in April.
Yeah.
It needs to be in April 1st.
Yeah. It says
Then-
in the language they sent us, it's an appointment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Student report to the board. Are you ready? All right. Been a while. Welcome back.
Thank you. So Destiny won't be joining us anymore because she has a class at CCV during this time. And I heard from her that she got accepted to her dream school, Skidmore.
Oh.
Yeah.
Cinder, congratulations. That's fantastic.
Yes. So for culture and community, my class that people love so much, we're doing projects this semester, and my project is making a volunteer group in Winooski. So having the high schoolers and the middle schoolers do some volunteering. I'm planning on having them go to Green Up Day and help Winooski in general to make people aware of Green Up Day. So that's one thing. But for today, what we did was an organizations fair. So a lot of our students went and played bingo, sort of, and we got to find opportunities that can help us in the future. And later in the evening, we had Indra, a former student of Winooski, and he is now going into pre-law. So that's something cool.
Out of Georgetown, yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about doing things and just jumping into it even though you don't think you can do it. Some other things that happened today were in elementary. They did jump rope for heart, so that was fun. Some programs that are starting in our school is called MedTrek, and it's middle schoolers trying to figure out health exploration, and some high schoolers are helping mentor these students. The the middle schoolers are learning more about careers and different fields in the medical field, like surgery and EMT. And there's also another mentoring thing with high schoolers and elementary students, so it helps connect or bridge elementary students with high school students. Another thing is that next week on Thursday there's a musical performance, band or chorus and orchestra, and Peace Jam is having an international bake sale on Friday, which happens usually annually. So people get to try new foods from different cultures, which is pretty cool, and people love free food, so it's great. For advisory reps, they're doing another retreat, and it's more days than before, so 3 to 4 days. But this time they won't be missing school, so we get more education. And during the workshops, we're going to be learning more about leadership, because right now in advisories, advisory reps are talking about announcements, but they don't know how to get students' attentions because they rather be on their phones. Yeah, so they're going to learn how to speak and control meetings. That's pretty much it. Any questions?
Right. Just one thought for what it might be worth. I know on Green Up Day, and I don't know why this struck me, but I know I came up here to the school one year, and I know there was quite a group of students cleaning up the yard, which was nice. I got a lot of trash out, and that needed to happen. I'm wondering though, we usually meet in one area. I don't know. It's been Scout at one point. I don't know exactly where they meet each year, and I'm just wondering if it might be something to try to see if the students would meet there and mingle with the folks that are coming down, and just kind of spreading out maybe in pairs, a couple of kids, 2-3 kids with a group of adults. And
So that's where Green Up Day starts? And they
The-
hand out bags and stuff? Is that what you mean?
It used to, I
Yeah,
think
I
before
don't-
Scout, it used to be in that coffee shop that's where Scout is now. I don't know if it continues to be there,
Yeah.
but there was a place where all Winooski citizens went, got the bags, had some
directions,
hot
everybody
chocolate and
mark
coffee,
off
and
on
then
the map.
everybody had sort of maps where they were going. And I haven't done it in 2 or 3 years, so I don't know, at least from that place. I know there's always one at Landry Park, but it was a place to meet community.
Right.
Community
And
kind of
just
came together.
having maybe some of the students go out and
Yeah,
You know.
I'm not sure who was running it.
here either at this point. Somebody
I'll check
through
on it.
with the city,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that would the coordination.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it was a student group here that was leading it too. There was Peace Jam or somebody else.
Yeah.
that
Okay.
was
And I
doing it,
remember,
yeah.
And again,
Ms.
it's just
Getz used to do it with the elementary school. We do Landry Park. We kind of all meet there.
just going back to our previous discussion about having a common purpose and getting not forcing, but pushing for the
Mhm.
intermingling. It's always interesting to get the perspective.
This was redone.
How many
thing.
graduating seniors do we have this year? Do you know?
I don't know, probably like 60 or so.
60?
I don't know about that. I think
It's
it's lower than that.
usually
Yeah, I mean, it's hard,
60.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
when they're
only
all over.
ask because, thinking about destiny and I think there are students getting their college.
Early college.
Early college,
Yep.
decision. It's a fine line of how do we celebrate that without devaluing the other forms of options and pathways after high school, and I don't know what's the proper way of doing those type of things.
Mhm.
But there is, I don't know how we can do this, but I also would like to find a way to honor and recognize Destiny's work
Mm-hmm.
on the school board for a year and a half, 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
year.
We've done that
Um,
to the others.
Yeah, we typically do that at the June meeting, and then we have the outgoing and the incoming. So
Yeah.
Sophia's gonna start working on the recruitment process and application for the new rep.
That was my next question.
Yeah, me and Destiny are gonna do it. She's gonna help me
Okay.
get ready.
And in June she'll definitely be able to come. I mean, because CCB
They'll be
will
out of
did
school,
so
yeah.
by then. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool.
All right. The next section here is the board self-assessment. We had talked about bringing this back. We had edited it to be a little bit more terse, I think, from where it was before. And that this is what we ended up with. I think I'm going to just throw out there, nope, I was gonna throw out waiting a month to give Margaret a one more shot at perspective. I'm still not convinced that after knowing my first 3 or 4 meetings, perspective was hard to come by and without, the rear view mirror. I think we'd just take a few minutes. I think the idea here was to take a few minutes to fill this out and then look at where we may need to make some improvements. So I think if we take just a few minutes, we'll collect them and try to put them together. And the intent here is to make sure we as a board are following our own rules in general. If we take just a few minutes and just and this as a focus, we'll do this once a quarter, we decided. So when you read these, read them in context of the last, 3 or 4 meetings, not just this one. Just one quick comment from anybody. I had a couple here that I had noted, but just any thoughts, comments, improvements?
Always good
Notes?
to remember what we're tasked with, like just reading down through it. I feel like it felt good to be able to be clear that we spend our time monitoring our own progress, our process, and clarifying our priorities. I feel like most of the discussions were about that, trying to get clear.
The one that I hesitated a little bit on, board uses less than 15% of the board meeting monitoring past performance.
I gave that one a 3 because
yeah.
I was like, I don't know about that.
Or other things, right? And the one that comes down to me always is Val's comment about what's going on in the school, and it comes back to focus on learning for me. I think Val would argue in the very purest of senses, policy governances, that wouldn't necessarily fit. But I think from what we've had, from the discussions we've had in that focus on learning, we probably have a rebellion to remove them. If we removed them. I think that's become a pretty.
Well, you're saying that focus on
it's
learning
become
doesn't?
I don't know that that necessarily fits into the purest description of policy government. It is a portion of the meeting that isn't looking, I'm not advocating getting rid of it. I just
Yeah,
keep
right.
going back to Val's words that I think she had mentioned that didn't seem to be
I
in the
think,
purest of senses.
I think you could put it into the,
But-
under the category of direct inspection, actually.
I feel better about that. I hadn't tied
Right?
it there.
And you could,
No.
you could tie, because there's some intentionality to the topics that are brought, you know, like we talk about those at the annual agenda, or the
Mhm.
retreat, sorry. And you guys kind of talk about some things, or I have suggested in the past, like when we were doing multi-tiered systems of support.
Yep.
It was important for you guys to understand that system and then the 3 different tiers. So I think in a way you could probably say that. I don't know if Val, the purist, would agree with me, but
We're gonna change that one. Okay.
be happy to
All right,
debate
I'm
around.
good.
I mean,
Those-
my feedback is
those are-
we're really good about being respectful and positive. I think the governance policies we're actually doing really, really well on. My only comment I made before too, a lot of people would tell us that 2 hours is a ideal block of time for us to be shooting for.
Mhm.
We're in that third hour of the day. We're probably not governing as well as we should be.
Yep.
I know it's hard on probably our student rep as well, so we could either restrict our agenda, move more quickly through it, or think about meeting more often for shorter periods of time.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think in general we come pretty close to the 2 hours. We have, once in a while we kind of bleed, which tonight we're doing. So I won't belabor the point. We're moving right along.
Moving on.
2 policies, substitute professional staff employment and promotion and retention. So let's do them in reverse order, from a discussion standpoint, the promotion and retention. Saw the, email attached to the bottom, and it sounds like that is not required anymore.
It is not required.
Okay.
So I would propose to you that the options are, you can keep the policy because you can still keep a policy if you want. You could move it to procedures, or you could remove it altogether.
Does it fit at all with proficiency-based learning, and rather than time and seat? Is there anything in there that is of any value with where we're moving?
I think there's value in it more so at the elementary level, and the proficiencies are not going to necessarily be there anytime soon. We have used this in the procedures since I've been here. I would say 8 to 10 times over the course of 5-6 years,
Okay,
and
that's
it's been at the
significant.
elementary level to make a decision about retention.
Okay, that is a significant amount of use.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you have it in procedures, how does that play out if we have any issues with it? If you have it just as a procedure, it is something that you guys follow, but we don't necessarily have a statement as a board as to, I guess I'm just trying to figure out how, if something comes back to the board based on the procedure, how do we handle that?
Well,
Not seen one, so.
right.
that's a-
So I
that's a-
guess you would handle that the way you would handle other procedures, unless there is legal requirements that you hear it. You're not required to hear it. You can actually say this is the work of the superintendent, and his or her decision is final. The board can take that position on a procedure. You can't always you're the board, so you can decide if you want to hear it, if you think it rises to that level. But things, anything related to obviously hazing, bullying, harassment, all that stuff is very lockstep, and yeah. But I think it would be like any other procedure for this one. If we were saying that the student, if we were recommending retention, and the parent disagreed with it, my experience is that that's a pretty hard one for a school to hold on to and to say. You know, usually in the cases that I've seen since I've been here, there's been agreement by the family that it's important for the student to be retained for another year. Not to say that it couldn't happen, but
I'm not sure we would overthrow it either. I'm not sure we would reverse any decision that, you know.
right. So the difference
Would come
between having a policy and procedure would be that the board would have the ability to say, this is not our decision, so the decision that was made by the administration stands, if it was in procedures. Versus policy, you know, somebody could make the argument that policies are the board's, so it is a policy, so you need to hear it.
Looking for help. Do we retain this as a policy if it's not necessarily required? We have it as procedure. If it's been 8 times it's come and used, give or take, in 5 or 6 years, and we've never seen anything come of it from a disagreement standpoint.
It seems like it's a group decision. I mean, with the parents being the main.
Parents, staff, and.
Yeah,
right.
you know, that it's almost like, it reminds me of like it's not the same thing, but like as an EST meeting, you know, that's sort of within the school district, that's not a part of what we do. Like, that's sort of the means, not the ends. Like, we hire you all to use your best judgment around how that communication happens, how the progress monitoring on the students' academic, social, emotional, including the parents. That seems like it's a.
It does. I'm just reminding myself now, looking at it in the procedures, it says a student will not be retained without parental consent except in the case of excessive absenteeism.
And that's measurable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But doesn't that seem more means-like? And if the parent,
Very
if they're
much.
trying to like retain or promote or hold back a kid without a parent's permission, they're going to complain, and then we'll get it from that end.
Right, it's
You
treatment
know,
of
like,
staff, treatment of parents at that
right,
point.
right.
Or students' treatment.
I mean, if the VSBA took it out, and it just
And they
seems so-
took it out because a rule was disbanded, deleted, whatever.
Right.
So
But
a
it just
state
seems like
rule
a
was
means
gone.
thing.
Yeah.
I would agree. All right,
Sounds good.
all right, so,
So what you need to do then is you need to repeal this policy.
Ooh, we have never done that before. That's
Having a good night.
exciting.
okay.
And how do we do that?
Just a motion to
Just a
repeal
motion?
policy
Okay.
5123
It's all right. This is good. Come on.
on promotion and retention. I would accept a motion, so I would.
You know
ex-
what, wait a
no,
minute
How do
here.
we
I want
frame
to,
it?
because we
No,
haven't
do-
done this,
yeah,
Right.
what I don't know
take-
is whether or not we need to have a second because of the, the readings.
Okay,
Whether,
Right.
in the
To
case of a
pass.
repeal,
Okay.
whether you have to have 2 opportunities for the public.
okay. All right.
So we need a
Since
second
there's so
on
many
this.
of them here to hear the first reading.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Let's-
So I think maybe we should follow the same process
And
that
then
you
have it
always
in-
follow, to have 2 readings.
Okay. The next
So-
one to come back in consent,
Yeah.
and that one would be, the consent agenda would be, a vote at that point to repeal it.
Correct.
Rather than to accept.
So it wouldn't be in the consent agenda?
It would
need
be. It would come back in a consent as repealing the
as
policy
repeal.
itself.
Okay.
And what I think we agreed that we'll retain the same policies that we had. You will retain the policies you have from a practical, procedural perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I thought that was gonna be a lot easier than that, but good discussion.
Good, no, it's good discussion.
Appreciate that.
Good learning.
All right. And thank you for checking on those too. I hate to just do the rubber stamp every time you come around and have to have it on the books if it's not something that's required. All right, substitute professional staff employment. I'll start, Sean, with you on that one. Anything in there that, other than obviously the references?
Yeah, no, it's, I wouldn't make any recommendations. There's a lot of congruence, obviously, with the model policy. And then there are updates to the legal references. There's quite a few of them, actually. Some of our, like in our cross references to our policies, those are procedures. And there's different names for the professional educators rules, and some updated VSA citations. So I would clean all that up, of course, for you for next month. But I don't have any recommendations on language changes for the policy itself.
And so, Margaret, just from history or perspective, we have a policy on the books. The VSBA will go through and either update them, rewrite them. Sometimes we're not using the VSBA version, so we'll have two of them in there and see if there's anything different. So in this case, I think we take the one we have. Everybody work with that as a first reading?
Is it the unlicensed person section, like, is driving me nuts, and I apologize for bringing it
Just
up.
to allow it?
No, it's the or. It's the or there that drives me nuts. An unlicensed person with a high school degree or who is currently a college student. I feel like that language is too loose.
Where are you? Are you in the procedures or are you in the model
Procedures,
policy?
yeah. Oh, I'm in the procedures.
Yeah,
Of our
page
policy.
2 of our
Oh,
policy.
is that our policy?
Yeah. Page 2, right at the top there, unlicensed persons.
Because you can be a college student technically without a high school diploma, right? I guess it's the college student that, like, kind of gets me at it, because I could be at CCV, I could be in college, right? And that's I'm just worried about there's a loophole here. I know that you will vet all the substitute teachers, but there's a little bit of loosiness in that language there.
I'd never thought of it in that way.
And I was just awake on Sunday when I read through all these. That's
Okay. Yeah.
So just a comma, an unlicensed person with a high school, I mean, these are procedures, right? So they really.
I mean, truthfully, I don't think
end
you
up being-
need that who's currently a college student. Like, you can delete that line, because I really want someone who's at least a high school degree person, right?
Right.
And so I think I would probably just be happy if you cross that, or who is currently a college student. You cross that line out, and then I'd be happy.
It's the high school degree or up,
Yes.
and it could be a college student without a high school degree is what your point is.
I mean, think about all the people who are potentially homeschooled. You know, what kind of high school degree are you talking? You know, I guess there is like a body that does the homeschooling,
Yeah,
right?
they get some sort of degree, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But like it, you know, I just, and if you really want me, like, you know, with a high school accredited, you know, degree, it's just more of a little bit more protection for you. I mean, I know that you're vetting, and I'm not really worried about it, but that or drove me nuts for some reason.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. The policy itself, you're good.
It's
you're
fine,
good.
yeah, the policy, I mean, the pay is interesting about, like, how you're gonna determine part-time and full-time, like,
We had a lot of discussion on that a couple of times.
did ya?
Yeah, well, just the lack of ability to find people.
Yeah, I know, I would've just said college student and not worry about whether they're part-time, full-time, and just call it 75. Like, why work so hard?
Well, that's pretty much what we do. We don't have time to ask people for
Exactly.
verification of their full or part-time status, so, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, why not make it just easy for yourself?
Yeah.
All right. So any other discussion there? You can take a read through. Those are obviously your policies, so.
Procedures, yeah.
Procedure, sorry.
Yep.
All right, legislative update, from a high level. Anything, I mean, the school, the building, upgrade from Lalonde is a big deal. Have you heard anything more about the negotiation on the health benefits? I know there was some
no.
delays or stutter steps in the progress there at one point?
No, I actually heard to the contrary. I heard that after I heard that there were some stutters, I heard that it's on track.
Okay.
All right. So I think from the education side, at the legislative level, There's a lot of stuff going on with Act 46 as you've seen, because there's
Yeah.
been, there was a recent, what was this, Judge Mello ruled on it and kind of said the school district's got to keep doing what they're supposed to be doing according to Act 46. But it sounds like there are some groups that are going to continue to push that. We'll see in the next week and a half or 2 weeks what makes it through crossover to House and Senate Ed, and then we'll have a better idea. The only other things of note was, I think, the legislation around vaping and e-cigarettes, the age, and then some purchasing requirements and things. It looks like that is getting a lot of attention and will move.
How about the ethnic studies?
I think that will make it through crossover. My concern about that one is not the content of it. It is the kind of the grain size of legislation, because per statute, curriculum development is the job of this administration, and this is legislating curriculum.
I probably totally agree, and I'm also just worried about, I've always been worried about people actually doing that really well.
Yeah.
And so it just food for thought about how we have conversations like this. I don't want to get into us developing curriculum, but I'm a little, I think the intent is really good. I'm worried about it's one of those execution things that I'm actually a little bit more nervous.
Yeah.
All right. Newsletter topics. Tori.
Almost hitting send on it.
All right. So that'll go out in April. I think if I remember it, I had the May one.
Yeah.
Maybe I completely neglected to tell you this one, Margaret. We all have a school newsletter. We just rotate through to send our thoughts. So we try to discuss in here what might some of those topics be 1 month in advance of when you'd have to write it, so we have some time. So I'll toss you into the loop. I'll give you some time to get your feet on the ground.
Boy, what was the topic?
It may, we can talk about potentially just an intro. I mean, you did one already, for when you were running. You had your little bio in there for her. But we can talk. I'll slip you in on a time and give you some time to get your feet on the ground, and then I'll send out a schedule with it. So,
Okay.
see where it goes. But the next one I got for May, at that point, the vote we're looking at is May 7th. The newsletter will be out right around
May 1st.
May 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that'll end up being the topic again, where we are done tours, more information available on the website. See where we go. Just don't want to cross over too many of your thoughts, so we'll have to tie out.
Okay.
And make sure we talk so that we don't either duplicate or miss something in the process.
To the school kind of board, you can tie it to like the new agenda bond, and is that what's a Winooski resident in house schools? And I've been thinking this a lot, because I think I've told the board here I was quite annoyed that I always get the question of do you have to be a Winooski resident to be on the school board? And inherently I always get it, because I think they don't think a non-white person can be on the school board who lives in Winooski.
Or a Winooski resident
A
for
Winooski
some reason.
Right? And I think a powerful statement is that like we need to stop upholding that a true Vermonter is someone that's 7 generations here.
It's funny, somebody asked me that today, like, you have to live in Winooski to, I said, well, I assume so.
So
It
it's
makes
not. Have you ever
sense.
gotten that question, Matt,
And I'm like,
Mike, and
what-
Tori? Have you ever gotten that
I
question?
said, but I
question that
do.
Wow.
Like,
So I mean, it's
Right.
a powerful statement that might be nice, and is talk about white fragility and moving out is talking about like, hey, Vermont is more. We've evolved as Vermonters. The diversity is important, and I was gonna write this in my June letter to kind of talk about how like being a Winooskiite is more than just the 7th generation. It's about the Somali population that is moving. Like, we've always, actually, when I did the history thing, when y'all did the history thing in the mills, one of the projects was in the mill. If you read the history of the mills, it was about immigrants. The Lebanese came in at one point.
Italians.
Right?
Always with it, yeah.
So
French
if you can
Canadians
write
coming
an article that ties in, this is why we want this school, because we're trying to welcome the new Vermonter, the new one who can do the learning, and get people who have been here for like 7 generations, who keep on questioning whether I'm a Winooskiite. I would mean a lot to me, but I would also emphasize it if you don't want that topic. I will more than happy to do it in June, and because the other topic that I think that will, and if you don't take that topic, if you take on this topic, the other topic that I'll take on in June when I write is the notion of our parents don't need to apologize for living in Winooski. And if we get the school board pass, the bond pass, that is a powerful argument, because the thing when I did the interviews with the high school principals, the one thing that hurt me a lot was when I was listening to the parents saying that their parenting is being questioned for
Always.
staying here in Winooski.
Yep.
And
I hear it all
and
the
the
time.
list of accomplishments
I get it all the time.
the list of accomplishments that this school district has had, we need to give the words to these parents to say, hey, we live in a great district. We're accepting, we're neighbors, right? And so yeah, I've been thinking a lot of like on that. And you can probably hear the emotion in what it is.
No, it's
But
Great.
but
And thanks for hearing the emotion from the parents in that group.
Yeah.
Because as parents, we've been questioned all the time about our relevance, our intuition as parents, like what we're doing to our kids, which also means our kids are being questioned about being educated here. And it's fascinating that parents, we're all getting those questions. It's fascinating to me that you both have experienced being questioned as even being residents of Winooski and being able to be on the board.
But you're not really Vermont. I mean, it's not even Winooski. It's like, well, you're not Vermont, because Vermont isn't you, right? Vermont, the Vermont is always characterized as the white space. So anybody who is not white has to make a case for being Vermont. And so we got a whole school district, right?
That needs to make
we
a
have
case
a
for
whole
themselves.
school district
Right.
of kids who have to make that case all the time.
and if Destiny is an example of some of their, and she listen, her dream, she got into her dream school. How can we not be proud of the district that we have? Thank you, Destiny, if you're watching this. Congratulate you. You know.
the list is long.
The list is long because
you just
yeah,
said pre-law Georgetown.
yeah,
Indra.
Indra went. I mean,
Indra,
full scholarship
phenomenal
to
kid.
Georgetown
I
right
heard
out of
that
high
was
school.
a decent school.
Yeah, heard somewhere.
Rumor.
Rumor has it. I mean, you can buy your way in with like
I was wondering what
$160,000, but we do it the right way here in Winooski.
Yeah,
you
he
know?
earned it.
Okay, I know I'm past the 2-hour mark, so I'll keep
Yes.
quiet.
Interesting topics.
Important topics.
I think you're going to make me think, which is good. I'll be in touch.
Please do.
Okay.
I'm around this weekend.
All right. I got a month, which is why I set them up this way. All right. Community activities. Anything specific? I know we got a lot coming up with tours and bond things. Let's see. Upcoming dates.
We did the budget things. I missed Monday here. How was that? The budget Monday vote here at the
was good.
school, right?
Well, the
annual
Monday
meeting?
night before.
Yeah, we went to the
meeting.
community dinner piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah. No. Thanks
was-
for doing Monday night. All of a sudden I was here. I was like, oh no, it's Monday night.
There are Canadians there.
Yeah, a group of Canadians come down and check out the process. So it was interesting. Had a discussion with them after. All right. Anything else? Remember, we had a lot of signatures and a picture. Don't want anybody to escape before we do the picture.
executive session.
And we do have an executive session. So I would accept a motion to move into executive session. This will be relatively terse. I would accept a motion to move into executive session.
Can we do the picture so Sophia gets in our picture?
Yes.
And then she can leave?
Yes. We can,
Picture first, then.
picture first.
Somebody
All right.
pick a spot.
All those in favor? Aye.
But it's not that green.